Hi, I'm Don Mecoy. I'm a business news reporter with the Oklahoman, and I'm joined today by Roger Beverage. Roger is the Chief Executive Officer and President of the Oklahoma Bankers Association, which is an advocacy group for the banking industry here in Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
Community bankers. And there's been a lot of news lately about banking. Most of it hasn't been good news. And I know I've heard a little bit from some bankers in Oklahoma who haven't been entirely pleased with some of the national coverage. I assume you've gotten an earful as well. What is it that these local bankers are kind of upset about with the tone and the tenor of the coverage lately?
Well, Don, the primary thing that I think upsets Oklahoma bankers is the national media tends to lump any financial services entity into a generic category that they call a bank. And consumers sometimes get confused thinking that if Merrill Lynch or Bear Stearns is a bank, that must mean it's just like my bank down the street here in wherever it might be, Gotebo or Hobart or wherever. And the fact is those are specialized investment banks and investment brokers, and they aren't anything like the banks in Oklahoma for the most part. Mm-hmm. Banks in Oklahoma are doing exceptionally well right now as a function of the state's economy, which is performing very well. And so one of the things I hear from bankers is, what, if anything, can we do to put out the good word about where Oklahoma banking is today compared to what you read about in the national press or hear about on television? So that's kind of what I suspect you're hearing as well.
Right, and I guess the banks that are similar to the banks that we're familiar with, the retail banks in Oklahoma, the ones that are having trouble are the ones in regions of the country where they are particularly hard hit by the subprime mortgage and those sorts of deals, which haven't hit us quite as hard.
There's a handful of states, California, Nevada, Arizona, Florida. Those states were hit hard by the speculation that was involved in subprime lending and development. Other states like Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan are having real estate problems in part because their local economies are not doing as well as other states. Oklahoma isn't in either one of those categories. In fact, it's just the reverse of what you read about in some of those states, particularly with respect to real estate. And our real estate has done exceptionally well here in Oklahoma and continues to be well below what it is in other states in terms of both price and value. It's amazing what you can buy in Oklahoma for a home today, and it's been that way for the past several years. And Oklahoma banks, of course, have enjoyed a good run, just like other banks. But they're a reflection of the economy, as I said earlier, and as long as the economy continues to perform well, Oklahoma banks are basically going to be all right.
Yeah, I guess, and Oklahoma banks are coming off a period, one of their best periods just in the last few years. They've really been doing well. It seems like things are a little tougher now than they were.
They are, and part of that is a reaction to the subprime crisis and the real estate meltdown, if you will, in those states that I mentioned, and how that plays out from an examination perspective. A lot of banking is based on perception and trust. A lot of it happens because people think the system works, and I know that may sound a little different, but the whole system is based on the assumption that your check's going to clear and that the card's going to be good and that the debit card withdrawal is going to be honored. No problem. When you have an exception that happens, a bounced check, for example, or not enough money to honor a debit card, that's when things kick in. And Oklahoma has hummed along. They've never gone up as high as some of their counterparts in other states, and they're still much further above where their counterparts are in most states. Oklahoma and Texas are probably two of the best states in the country.
Well, now, we recently had this FDIC coming in and taking over the IndyMac Bank out in California, which was clearly a victim of the whole subprime and these jumbo mortgages that they were trying to guarantee. But anytime something like that happens, I know bankers' phones start ringing, even here in Oklahoma.
Sure.
What should I be doing? Well, what's some advice you would give to consumers?
Well, the first thing I'd say to consumers is that even if you banked at IndyMac, don't worry about anything because nothing's safer than money in the bank. Your money's insured. insured, it's protected up to $100,000, and we can talk about various ways to structure beyond the $100,000 in coverage. If it's a retirement account, it's up to $250,000. But that's the first thing I'd say to any consumer out there about, gosh, is my money safe? Because that's what people want to know. Am I protected? Absolutely. And you don't have to worry about it. In Oklahoma, all you have to remember is that nothing is safer than money in the bank, period. Now, that having been said, what can they look for? They can look for the kind of service they get from the bank. People that know what they're doing and take care of their customers are likely to be much better run and financially sound than somebody who just kind of operates out of a fly-by-night storefront somewhere. And if you've been around for a while, the chances are that you're going to be a lot better off dealing with somebody that has been around for a while as opposed to somebody that just opened up in a storefront. Those are the kind of things that you can go to public websites like the FDIC, find information out about a particular bank. You can find out about their capital levels, and that's important because capital is really a buffer between any bad loans and the depositor's money. And Oklahoma banks hold over $5 billion in capital right now. It's $1.5 trillion nationwide, but $5 billion in Oklahoma, and that's a good sign. We don't have any banks on the problem list that I'm aware of. I could go through the books and tell you where there might be a particular problem, but for the most part, our banks are doing exceptionally well. The average return on assets is not at a record level, but it's still solid at 1.3%. The benchmark is 1. Capital benchmark is roughly 6%. Oklahoma banks are at 9.40%, something like that.
Yeah, it's generally pretty positive.
Very good.
Well, and I guess one thing you could probably mention too, I think most of the bankers I've talked to, they don't mind the customers calling in and asking questions. If they have any questions, call your banker. And as he said also, FDIC.gov is a great place for consumer information. They have a whole separate website there. So that's a great
And you can get
advice.
information on the state's banks, the region's banks, or on a specific bank.
Yep.
And you can, and the most important thing for a consumer to remember about looking at those numbers is to trend it over time. All a call report number is just a snapshot on that particular day. And what makes it more relevant is when you look at what it's been doing over the course of the last couple of years or so. And if you do that, I think almost without exception in Oklahoma, you're going to find that the banks here are doing exceptionally well and much, much better than their colleagues in other states.
Okay. Well, listen, Roger, thanks for all the information.
You bet.
And I appreciate you coming in. You can read more on newsok.com and also in the Oklahoman in the business section. And I appreciate you viewing today. Thank you.